Welcome back, everyone, to another of our chapter book read-alongs of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. We're finishing up chapter 15 today, so let's get into it, because we left off at quite the cliffhanger. All right, if you are watching this with someone, feel free to pause the video and talk about maybe some important things that you remember from our story we've read so far, or a quick review, because we're almost at the end and we need to remember what's happening. So, if you're watching with somebody, feel free to pause. If not, here goes my super quick review. Harry Potter is the boy who lived. He survived being attacked by an evil dark wizard named Voldemort when he was just a baby. Sadly, his parents died, and he had to go live with his aunt, uncle, and cousin, the Dursleys. They are not nice people, nor are they magical, which means they're muggles. Harry learned on his 11th birthday that he is a wizard. He was accepted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. And he met Hagrid. Hagrid took him to Diagon Alley and Gringotts Wizard Bank and then gave him his ticket for the Hogwarts Express. Harry met his friends Ron and Hermione on the train, and they have been inseparable. So, they are learning all about how to become witches and wizards from their professors there at Hogwarts. Harry also has joined the Quidditch team for their house, Gryffindor. So, a couple other things to remember. Harry and Ron and Hermione accidentally ran into a three-headed dog, whose name is Fluffy. It is protecting something that was made by a man named Nicholas Flamel, the Sorcerer's Stone. It can create an elixir, which means a potion, that will help you live forever. And also, it can turn any solid thing into gold. They think that their Professor Snape is trying to steal it and has been doing some pretty nasty things up until that point. Well, another thing occurred in which Hagrid was trying to raise a dragon in his tiny hut. So Harry, Ron, and Hermione helped out by getting that dragon out of there. Harry and Hermione walked it all the way up to the tallest tower in the castle and got it away. But they were caught. They lost many points for their house, which is for a competition of which house gets the most good points, and have detention. So, we are meeting our friends as Harry, Hermione, Neville, and Draco are going into the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid for their detention. Let's see what happens in Chapter 15, The Forbidden Forest.
Right then, said Hagrid. Now, listen carefully, 'cause it's dangerous what we're gonna do. Tonight, I don't want no one taking risks. Follow me over here a moment.
He led them to a very large edge of the forest. Holding his lamp up high, he pointed down a narrow, winding earth track that disappeared into the thick black trees. A light breeze lifted their hair as they looked into the forest.
Look here, said Hagrid. See that stuff shining on the ground? Silvery stuff? That's unicorn blood. There's a unicorn in there been hurt badly by summit. This is the second time in a week. I found one dead last Wednesday. We're gonna try and find the poor thing. We might have to put it out of its misery.
And what if whatever's hurting the unicorn finds us first? Said Malfoy, unable to keep the fear out of his voice.
There's nothing that lives in the forest that'll hurt you if you're with me or Fang, said Hagrid. And keep to the path, right now. We're gonna split into two parties and follow the trail in different directions. There's blood all over the place. It must have been staggering around since last night at least.
I want Fang, said Malfoy quickly, looking at Fang's long teeth.
All right, but I'll warn you, he's a coward, said Hagrid. So me, Harry, and Hermione'll go one way, and Draco, Neville, and Fang'll go the other. Now, if any of us finds a unicorn, we'll send up green sparks, right? Get your wands out and practice now. That's it. And anyone gets into trouble, send up red sparks. That'll come and find you. So, be careful. Let's go.
The forest was black and silent. A little way into it, they reached a fork in the earth path, and Harry, Hermione, and Hagrid took the left, while Malfoy, Neville, and Fang took the right path. They walked in silence, their eyes on the ground. Every now and then a ray of moonlight through the branches above it lit a spot of silver-blue blood in the fallen leaves. Harry saw that Hagrid looked very worried. "Could a werewolf be killing the unicorns?" Harry asked.
Not fast enough, said Hagrid. It's not easy to catch a unicorn. They're powerful magic creatures. I never knew one to be hurt before.
They walked past a mossy tree stump. Harry could hear running water. There must be a stream somewhere close by. There were still spots of unicorn blood here and there along the winding path.
You all right, Hermione? Hagrid whispered. Don't worry. It kind of gone far. If it's badly hurt, and they'll be able... Get behind that tree!
Hagrid seized Harry and Hermione and hoisted them off the path behind a towering oak. He pulled out an arrow and fitted it into the crossbow, raising it, ready to fire. The three of them listened. Something was slithering over the dead leaves nearby. It sounded like a cloak trailing along the ground. Hagrid was squinting up at the dark path, but after a few seconds, the sound faded away.
I knew it, he murmured. There's something here that shouldn't be.
A werewolf? Harry suggested.
There wasn't no werewolf, and it wasn't no unicorn either, said Hagrid grimly. Right. Follow me, but careful now.
They walked more slowly, ears straining for the faintest sound. Suddenly, in a clearing ahead, something definitely moved.
Who's there? Hagrid called. Show yourself. I'm armed.
And into the clearing came, was it a man or a horse? To the waist, a man, with red hair and a beard, but below that was a horse's gleaming chestnut body with a long reddish tail. Harry and Hermione's jaws dropped.
Oh, it's you, Ronan,
said Hagrid in relief.
How are you?
He walked forward and shook the centaur's hand.
Good evening to you, Hagrid,
said Ronan. He had a deep, sorrowful voice.
Were you going to shoot me? Can't be too careful, Ronan, said Hagrid, patting his crossbow. There's something bad loose in the forest. This is Harry Potter and Hermione Granger, by the way, students up at the school. And this is Ronan. You two, he's a centaur.
We noticed, said Hermione faintly.
Good evening, said Ronan. Students, are you? And do you learn much up at the school?
A bit, said Hermione timidly.
A bit. Well, that's something, Ronan sighed.
He flung back his head and stared at the sky.
Mars is bright tonight.
Yeah, said Hagrid, glancing up too.
Listen, I'm glad I run into you, Ronan, 'cause there's unicorn been hurt. You seen anything?
Ronan didn't answer immediately. He stared unblinkingly upwards, then sighed again. There's always the innocent are the first victims, he said. So it's been for ages past. So it is now.
Yeah, said Hagrid, but have you seen anything, Ronan? Anything unusual?
Mars is bright tonight, Ronan repeated, while Hagrid watched him impatiently. Unusually bright.
Yeah, but I was meaning anything unusual a bit nearer to home, said Hagrid. So you haven't noticed any stranger?
Yet again, Ronan took a while to answer. At last he said, The forest hides many secrets. A movement in the trees behind Ronan made Hagrid raise his bow again, but it was only a second centaur.
black-haired, bodied, and wilder looking than Ronan. "Hullo, Bane," said Hagrid. "All right?"
"Good evening, Hagrid. I hope you are well."
"Well enough. Look, I just been asking Ronan if seen anything odd here lately. Only there's a unicorn been injured. Wouldn't know anything about that?"
Bane walked over to stand next to Ronan. He looked skywards. "Mars is bright tonight," he said simply.
"We've heard," said Hagrid grumpily. "Well, if either of you see anything, let me know, won't you? We'll be off then."
Harry and Hermione followed him out of the clearing, staring over their shoulders at Ronan and Bane until the trees blocked their view.
"Never," said Hagrid irritably, "try to get a straight answer from a centaur. Ruddy stargazers. Not interested in anything closer than the moon."
"Are there many of them in here?" asked Hermione.
"A fair few. Keep themselves to, mostly. But they're good enough about turning up whenever I need a word. They're deep-minded centaurs. They know things. Just don't let on much."
"Do you think that was a centaur we heard earlier?" said Harry.
"Did it sound like hooves to you? Nah, if you ask me, there's something that's been killing the unicorns. Never heard anything like it before."
They walked on through the dense, dark trees. Harry kept looking nervously over his shoulder. He had the nasty feeling that they were being watched. He was very glad they had Hagrid and his crossbow with them. They had just passed a bend in the path when Hermione grabbed Hagrid's arm. "Hagrid, look! Red sparks! The others are in trouble!"
"You two wait here!" Hagrid shouted. "Stay on the path. I'll come back for you."
They heard him crashing through the undergrowth and stood looking at each other, very scared, until they couldn't hear anything but rustling leaves around them. "You don't think they've been hurt, do you?" whispered Hermione. "I don't care if Malfoy was, but if something's got Neville, it's our fault he's here in the first place." The minutes dragged by. Their ears seemed to be sharper than usual. Harry seemed to pick up every sigh of the wind, every cracking twig. What was going on? Where were the others? At last, a great crunching noise announced Hagrid's return. Malfoy, Neville, and Fang were with him. Hagrid was fuming. Malfoy, it seemed, had sneaked up behind Neville and grabbed him for a joke. Neville had panicked and sent up red sparks.
"We'll be lucky to catch anything now, with the racket you two are making, right? We're changing groups. Neville, you stay with me and Hermione. Harry, you go with Fang and this idiot. Sorry," Hagrid added in a whisper to Harry, "but he'll have a harder time frightening you, and we've got to get this done."
So Harry set off into the heart of the forest with Malfoy and Fang. They walked for nearly half an hour, deeper and deeper into the forest, until the path became almost impossible to follow because the trees were so thick. Harry thought the blood seemed to be getting thicker. There were splashes on the roots of a tree, as though the poor creature had been thrashing around in pain close by. Harry could see a clearing up ahead, through the tangled branches of an ancient oak. "Look," he murmured, holding out his arm to stop Malfoy. Something bright white was gleaming on the ground. They inched closer. It was a unicorn, all right, and it was dead. Harry had never seen anything so beautiful and sad. Its long, slender legs were stuck out at odd angles where it had fallen, and its mane was spread pearly white on the dark leaves. Harry had taken one step toward it when a slithering sound made him freeze where he stood. A bush on the edge of the clearing quivered. Then, out of the shadows, a hooded figure came crawling across the ground like some stalking beast. Harry, Malfoy, and Fang stood transfixed. The cloaked figure reached the unicorn. It lowered its head over the wound of the animal's side and began to drink his blood. "Ah!" Malfoy let out a terrible scream and bolted.
So did Fang. The hooded figure raised his head and looked right at Harry. Unicorn blood was dripping down its front. It got to its feet and came swiftly towards him. He couldn't move for fear. Then a pain pierced his head like he'd never felt before. It was as though his scar was on fire. Half blinded, he staggered backwards. He heard hooves behind him, galloping, and something jumped clean over him, charging at the figure. The pain in Harry's head was so bad he fell to his knees. It took a minute or two to pass. When he looked up, the figure had gone. The centaur was standing over him. Not Ronan or Bane. This one looked younger. He had white blonde hair and a palomino body. "Are you all right?" said the centaur, pulling Harry to his feet. "Yes, thank you." "What was that?" The centaur didn't answer. He had astonishing blue eyes, like pale sapphires. He looked carefully at Harry, his eyes lingering on the scar that stood out, vivid, on Harry's forehead. "You are the Potter boy," he said. "You had better get back to Hagrid. The forest is not safe at this time, especially for you. Can you ride? It'll be quicker this way. My name's Ferenz," he added, as he lowered himself on his front legs so that Harry could clamber on his back. There was suddenly a sound of more galloping than the other side of the clearing. Ronan and Bane came bursting through the trees, their flanks heaving and sweaty. "Ferenz," Bane thundered. "What are you doing? You have a human on your back. Have you no shame? Are you a common mule?"
"Do you realize who this is?" said Ferenz. "This is the Potter boy. The quicker he leaves this forest, the better."
"What have you been telling him?" growled Bane. "Remember, Ferenz, we are sworn not to set ourselves against the heavens. Have we not read what is to come in the movement of the planets?"
Ronan pawed the ground nervously. "I'm sure Ferenz thought he was acting for the best," he said in his gloomy voice. Bane kicked his back legs in anger.
"For the best? What is that to do with us? Centaurs are concerned with what has been foretold. It is not our business to run around like donkeys after stray humans in the forest."
Ferenz suddenly reared on his hind legs in anger, so that Harry had to grab his shoulders to stay on. "Do you not see that unicorn?" Ferenz bellowed at Bane. "Do you not understand why it was killed? Or have the planets not let you in on that secret? I set myself against what is lurking in the forest. Bane, yes, with humans alongside me if I must." And Ferenz whisked around, with Harry clutching onto him as best as he could. They plunged off into the forest, leaving Ronan and Bane behind them. Harry didn't have a clue what was going on. "Why is Bane so angry?" he asked. "What was that thing you saved me from anyway?" Ferenz slowed to a walk, warned Harry to keep his head bowed in case of low-hanging branches, but did not answer Harry's question. They made their way through the trees in silence, for so long that Harry thought Ferenz didn't want to talk to him anymore. They were passing through a particularly dense patch of trees, however, when Ferenz suddenly stopped. "Harry Potter, do you know what unicorn blood is used for?" "No," said Harry, startled by the odd question. "We've only used the horn and tail hair in potions." "That is because it is a monstrous thing to slay a unicorn," said Ferenz. "Only one who has nothing to lose and everything to gain would commit such a crime. The blood of a unicorn will keep you alive, even if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price. You have slain something so pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you will have but a half-life, a cursed life, from that moment the blood touches your lips." Harry stared at the back of Ferenz's head, which was dappled at silver in the moonlight. "But who would be so desperate?" he wondered aloud. "If you're going to be cursed forever, death's better, isn't it?"
It is, Firenze agreed, unless all you need is to stay alive long enough to drink something else. Something that will bring you back to full strength and power. Something that will mean you can never die. Mr. Potter, do you know what is hidden in the school at this very moment? The Sorcerer's Stone! Of course! The elixir of life! But I don't understand who... Can you think of nobody who has waited many years to return to power? Who has clung to life awaiting their chance? It was as though an iron fist had clenched suddenly around Harry's heart. Over the rustling of the trees, he seemed to hear once more what Hagrid had told him on the night they had met. Some say he died. Codswallop, in my opinion. Dunno if he had enough human left in him to die. Do you mean, Harry croaked, that was Harry, are you all right? Hermione was running towards them down the path, Hagrid puffing along behind her. I'm fine, said Harry, hardly knowing what he was saying. The unicorn's dead, Hagrid. It's in the clearing back there. This is where I leave you, Firenze murmured as Hagrid hurried off to examine the unicorn. You are safe now. Harry slid off his back. Good luck, Harry Potter, said Firenze. The planets have been read wrongly before now, even by centaurs. I hope this is one of those times. He turned and cantered back into the depths of the forest, leaving Harry shivering behind him. Ron had fallen asleep in the dark common room, waiting for them to return. He shouted something about Quidditch fouls when Harry roughly shook him awake. In a matter of seconds, though, he was wide-eyed as Harry began to tell him and Hermione what happened in the forest. Harry couldn't sit down. He paced up and down in front of the fire. He was still shaking. Snape wants the stone for Voldemort, and Voldemort's waiting in the forest. And all this time we thought Snape just wanted to get rich. Stop saying his name, said Ron in a terrified whisper, as if he thought Voldemort could hear him. Harry wasn't listening. Firenze saved me, but he shouldn't have done. Bane was furious. He was talking about interfering with the planets, say is going to happen. They must show Voldemort's coming back. Bane thinks Firenze should have let Voldemort kill me. I suppose that's written in the stars as well. Will you stop saying his name? Ron hissed. So all I've got to wait for now is Snape to steal the stone, Harry went on feverishly. Then Voldemort will be able to come and finish me off. Well, I suppose Bane will be happy. Hermione looked very frightened, but she had a word of comfort. Harry, everyone says Dumbledore's the only one you know who was ever afraid of. With Dumbledore around, you know who won't touch you. Anyway, who says the centaurs are right? It sounds like fortune-telling to me, and Professor McGonagall says that's a very imprecise branch of magic. The sky had turned light before they stopped talking. They went to bed exhausted, their throats sore. But the night's surprises weren't over. When Harry pulled back his sheets, he found his invisibility cloak folded neatly underneath them. There was a note pinned to it. Just in case. The end of Chapter 15, The Forbidden Forest.
Whoa, that was a lot happening in that chapter. So, let's discuss Chapter 15, The Forbidden Forest. I have a couple questions. Who is Ronan? Ronan is a centaur. So a centaur is a pretend creature that is a horse and then a guy sticking out the top of it. I'm sure you've seen some in other movies or read about them in a few different books. But it is a pretend creature for this book and a lot of other things. What does he tell Hagrid? kept saying Mars is unusually bright, right? So they look up to the planets and the stars and try to read them, and they think that they're telling them the future. So we'll see. What do Harry and Draco see in the Forbidden Forest? First off, they found the unicorn, right? So what was their job during their detention? They were looking for something. A unicorn who was hurt. So they were sadly following the trail of blood. And when Harry and Draco found it, it wasn't alone, was it? There was a mysterious figure in a cloak swooping in over the unicorn. What does Firenze tell Harry about unicorns? Firenze tells Harry that unicorn blood can keep someone alive even if they are an inch from death, but at quite a cost, because you have hurt something so pure and defenseless that you will be cursed for the rest of your existence. Harry is a little confused. Why would anyone choose something like that? Well, he learns from Firenze that something has been lurking in the forest, and they believe it is Voldemort. And they put together that the Sorcerer's Stone is in the castle, so he must be after it. After talking to Ron and Hermione about all of his worries, which are many, what does Harry find waiting for him in his bed? His invisibility cloak, just in case. I have a theory on who put that back there, but who do you think gave it to him at Christmas time and then put it back on his bed just in case? I bet we're on the same page. We'll have to see as we continue Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. We only have 2 chapters left. So I hope you stick around and we finish up this story together. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.